Hello, welcome to the Lighthouse Labs 21-day coding challenge. So we're on day 1, and so this is for all the newbies here. It's an explanation of what is going on with the challenge and the interface and all that kind of stuff. So if this is your first time coding, I know all of this can seem overwhelming, but it's okay. We're just gonna break it down step by step and panel by panel, and you'll get it. Okay, so first of all, you access the challenges by clicking on challenges, and each day, each of these squares will be unlocked. So we're in the first day, and on this page, you will see that there's instructions on the left, and then this is on the right. This is your coding. This is where you do your coding, okay? This is your code editor. And so let's just go through what the problem is. Okay, so we are in Codeville. So we're the current mayor, nearing the end of our first term, and we've decided to run for re-election, basically. And we're using JavaScript to help us with our re-election campaign. Okay, so our first thing is we're going door to door to talk to the citizens. There are quite a few neighborhoods, but we have a dedicated crew of volunteers. So you want to make sure that the work is distributed evenly between the teams. So let's figure out how many neighborhoods each volunteer should visit. So given an array of volunteer names and an array of neighborhood names, complete the door-to-door function. So it returns the number of neighborhoods that each volunteer should visit. Okay. Okay, so we will look at the examples. So this is something called an array. So it's basically a list. So we have an array of volunteers. So in the sample here, we have 4 volunteers, and these are all of their names. And then we have the neighborhoods, which is also an array. So this is the list of our neighborhoods. And because we have 4 volunteers and 8 neighborhoods, we expect that each volunteer will visit 2 of them. Okay. So this is like this syntax here is a function. So we, in our function called door to door, we have 2 inputs, right? We need the 2 values, which is our list of volunteers, which is this one, and then the list of neighborhoods. Okay. So when we're not coding, if we just think about it logically, if we have 8 neighborhoods and 4 volunteers, what we're essentially doing is divide number of neighborhoods by number of volunteers. So I'm just gonna make this a little bit bigger so you can see it clearly. Okay. Right. So I'm just gonna remove the hints here. I'll go over what the hints are saying. So when we're thinking about this logically, essentially this is what we're doing, right? Got 8 neighborhoods, 4 volunteers. We expect the number 2. We're basically just dividing the number of neighborhoods by the number of volunteers. Okay, so but how do we get the number, right? We have a list, like the array. The volunteers is an array. So what they were saying here with use console.log in your functions. So what we can do is, if I can type console.log volunteers, and to get the number, we use .length. So this gives us how many things are in our array. So how many volunteers are in our list of volunteers? Not log. Neighborhoods. Dot link. Okay. So this, if we run the code, this is what we'll see. And to make it clear, we can also just, say volunteers and neighborhoods. Okay, so when the function runs, it goes one line at a time. So the first is going to just print out volunteers, and then it's going to tell us how many volunteers we have. And then we're going to get the word neighborhoods, and then we're going to see how many neighborhoods we have in that list. The reason why I'm doing this is because they have actually a couple of sample functions, so it's just easier to see. So let's run the code here. Okay. Okay, they only have one test actually. Okay, that's fine. And now we get to look at what they give us. Okay, cool. So this corresponds with what I've written before, right? Like I wanted to just print out the word volunteers, which I have here, which is 3, and neighborhoods, I wanted the word, and then I got the number of neighborhoods, which is apparently also 3. And this test result is, it just tells us the inputs, why it's failing, and all that kind of stuff. So it says, okay, the door, well, it's because we haven't written any real code. I'm just printing information out. That's why this is failing. And it's what we expect, so it's good. Okay. So it says it's failed. It should return the number of neighborhoods divided by the number of volunteers, which we know, but we haven't done yet. And the reason is our code ran, but did not produce the correct result. And then it's helpfully giving us a hint saying .length, which we know because, we got the number here. And it's also given us the failing test code. So we have an idea of, what we're working with here. And with the test code, this is a check. This is a JavaScript function, so it's a test for them to check our answers. So they're expecting each volunteer to need to visit one neighborhood because 3 divided by 3 is 1. So it's just, so this is what the test is doing, right? The test is saying when this function runs with this list of volunteers with this list of neighborhoods, we should get the answer 1. And right now it says undefined. It's because we're not returning anything from the function because we haven't done it yet. So let's do this properly. So we need to do, whoops, I can't type. This is a common problem with coding. Neighborhoods, whoops, I need to s.length divided by volunteers.length. So that's what we said we needed to do. And for a function to work properly, you need to return the value. It's kind of like sometimes, when you run a function, you need to get the data back, right? So it's like you're telling, the example I like to give is you might send someone out to do a job and then assume that they've done the job. Or if you send someone to do the job and you wanted them to come back and report back to you that they've done it or what the result is. So that's what returning does. It's like you're telling the computer to do a job and then you want to get a kind of like status report or some kind of data back from them. So they need to come back with something for you. Or there are some functions where you don't return anything because you just assume that it's done. Yeah? Okay, so now we can run the code. And it says passed. Our functions have passed. I don't think I submitted my code this morning, actually. Whoops. All right, so We submitted and our challenge is solved. So this is the first day. So there is also a hint button that you can use to kind of get to know the key concepts that you need to get through the challenge. So if I click on this link, it links to the Mozilla's developer docs, which is very helpful. And you can test out the functions here yourself. So, you know, we've seen this type of syntax before with the list of volunteers. And this is a list of clothing. And when we run it, console.log clothing.length, we see 4 items and it gives you back 4, the number 4. Okay, so I think that's it for the first day. Like, I hope this is a helpful overview of what is happening in their interface, because if you're new, you don't know what's happening. There's a lot of panels, a lot of like new things that you've looked at that you might not, you know, have seen before. And this is just a quick walkthrough of what's happening. If you're completely new to JavaScript, I do highly recommend you to do the Code Academy's Introduction to JavaScript, because the interface is similar and you will need to know some of these concepts and apply them to the challenges. So it's helpful if you know like a little bit of the basics. So you should know, so you should go through introduction, conditionals, functions, scope, maybe. Definitely arrays, because we've already seen arrays in our very first challenge, loops, and objects. Iterators, not sure about the iterator. But anyways, yeah, if you are completely new to JavaScript, you really should do a little bit of studying this weekend. The day 2 and day 3 will be, you know, not too challenging to figure out, but it's going to ramp up in difficulty, and you'll have a way easier time if you have seen some of these concepts before. You don't need to know them well, just like follow Code Academy here and you'll be set.